Hey there. If we read any of the ancient texts relating to the Western traditions, we discover that in those days the practitioners viewed their training as a way of life rather than a set of self-improvement exercises. They had many eloquent phrases to describe this, sometimes based on an exemplary figure that they would seek to emulate as a template of excellence in their path. So you'd be living a Pythagorean way of life or a Parmenidean lifestyle. Other times they'd use the goal to describe what they were doing. So you'd be living the life of a philosopher, or you'd be seeking the mysteries. In Hermeticism, they're more poetic. You would be walking the way of Hermes, or fully dedicated to the path of immortality. I believe as modern practitioners we can really learn from this ancient wisdom. We need to make sure that our life is integrated and that our goals move into all aspects of our being and our functioning. What we seek to develop in our meditation practice, we must bring into our life. The aim is to produce a permanent increase in our ability in whatever area we're working on. So, if we're working on improving our imagination in our exercises, let's apply that imagination in daily life. If we're developing higher awareness through our meditation, we need to be aware in life, in everything we do. If you want superior concentration, there's no use just applying this in your meditation. It needs to be applied in everything you do. And likewise, any other abilities that you develop, and I mean all the abilities which are possible throughout the whole syllabus of Hermeticism, should be part of how you interact with the world. Your exercises are to give you a superior way of functioning in life, which allows you to express your good intentions and to make sure that your will manifests in the world. Now, many people in the modern age find this hard, and this is because we interact with the world in a very different way than the times when these traditions were founded. We're used to interacting with machines more than we are with living things. So we can get our computer, and if we want to produce a permanent improvement to it, we can just install some new hardware, or we can download some software, and after a short space of time something has improved or changed in a very long-lasting way. Now, if we think about this, this is very much like any task that we undertake in the natural world with something that's not alive. So you want to build a wall. That's very different than growing a tree. You build a wall, you put a certain amount of time into building the wall, and it's established and there's hardly any upkeep. If you're dealing with a changing, ongoing, living process, you need a very different approach. So let's imagine we want to have some apples. We need to plant the pip of the apple, and we need to look after that. We need to water it, we need to make sure the location is just right, we need to make sure it's protected so nothing eats it or damages it. Maybe we want to fertilise that, maybe we want to weed around it. A lot of people at this beginning stage, they keep this sapling, this very small plant, away from the outside environment. They actually protect it, and they really nurture it in that way. Then, as it gets bigger, they transplant it back out into an environment where they think it's going to be safe. But they'll still keep monitoring it, they'll still keep watering it, they'll still weed around it, and if something goes wrong, they'll adapt to that. Maybe it gets blown over and they have to straighten it up, or maybe the sun isn't as strong in that area as they thought and they had to transplant it. Then, as this ongoing process continues, watering, fertilising, monitoring, maybe even pruning if it's growing in the wrong way, when the plant comes to fruition, fruits grow, and then we get the reward for that work, and the tree is established, and it doesn't need so much upkeep. Now, you are like the tree. You are an ongoing process. You are alive. You're not the computer or the brick wall. Now, many people will try to convince others that there is a way. If you come to them, you can do 2 weeks of something and it will cause a permanent change in you. Now, this might be possible, but if we look at circumstances like that fruit tree, only very forceful things seem to do such. So maybe they're not such a good idea, and maybe they're quite unrealistic expectations. So an enlightened person knows that they are an ongoing process, and thus they need to make adjustments to their life with that knowledge. So if they want to lose weight, they want to lose fat, they need to make small adjustments which are going to be permanent. And just like you're like the tree, these changes are like that. You need to protect them when they're young. You need to plant the seed, protect that change, let it grow, and then make sure it's fully established. People don't tend to do that. They tend to treat themselves as if they are not changing, as if it's not an ongoing situation. So they'll have a diet, lose the weight that they don't like, and then go back to the normal lifestyle, as if nothing is going to carry on changing after that point. They think they've built the brick wall or installed the software. They've lost the weight, they go back to the normal diet, the weight comes back on. That they haven't approached things with an understanding of their true nature. So, with this in view, we can understand why we need to have a lifestyle approach. If we perform exercises and we gain certain abilities, and then we get to the point where we've established them to a very small degree and then stop, we will regress. So just like if you lift weights and you get to a certain weight that you're lifting, you should give your body some time to adapt to that, and the longer you can give your body with that adaptation before you change your training or you lighten the weights for a while, the less upkeep there'll be needed. If you let go too early, then your body will just default back to a more gentle adaptation based on what you do in your day-to-day life. So, take note with your hermetic exercise, with your meditations, they are not hoops to jump through. They are not goals to reach. Once you've met the criteria of an exercise, that doesn't mean it's time to move on. It's time to gather the fruit. So if you've learnt to be still and calm in your meditation, keep on with that exercise and bring that stillness and calmness into your daily life. And only when you've seen this become a permanent fixture, this is just the way you are a calm and relaxed person, then you might want to consider moving on to perhaps a more advanced exercise. Likewise, have realistic, kind expectations of yourself. You are this ongoing process and everything is interconnected in your life. So, we tend to be better with physical training in this respect. We tend to know that if we're lifting very heavy weights the night before we move house the next day, it's going to have a knock-on effect. But with matters of the mind, because it's not so tangible and because the mind tends to express its way in different ways, sometimes when you're tired you just feel disinterested in things, or you just lose a bit of control, or you just don't apply yourself in the same way. But people tend to expect themselves to be able to immediately introduce very dramatic, very straining routines. So get up in the morning, do half an hour yoga, do 20 minutes meditation, do 10 minutes breathing, and then they've got work. They've got 8 hours of work. These two are going to interact with each other. So you need to plant the seed and work up slowly, because your mind needs to grow the stamina and the ability to be aware in meditation and aware at work to the same level, and it's not used to that. Likewise, have understanding that if you have a very serious day or a very late night or something that takes up a lot of stamina, when you sit next, it may be more of a challenge. Now you can use this to your advantage. You can sit knowing it will be more of a challenge and use this to challenge your abilities and really enjoy trying to keep that focus through that tiredness or that less exact focus that you have. But be compassionate and aware that these are interrelated. And also be aware you can't do so many things. There may be hobbies that you're used to really putting a lot of effort into, and if you want to dedicate yourself to a path which raises consciousness and develops the mental faculties through meditation or through exercises, you may not be able to maintain a high level of skill in both at the same time if you also have a job. One unfortunate thing in this aspect is that a lot of people are basing their expectations of their training on monasteries or on ascetic people. So that it's someone who doesn't have a workload or have children, so they are suggesting routines or routines from ancient manuals which, if you're going to do both, you're going to have a hard time, and you may not make progress at either. So it's very important to have a realistic expectation of what you're going to do. So if we remember these principles, then we are in a very powerful position to train in an integrated way. We remember that we are an ongoing process. So during our life, we make sure that our practice routines are constant. Just like we water the plant and give it fertilizer, we do our meditation every day and we build up slowly. Because we're a living process, we have realistic expectations. There isn't going to be a switch that turns on or off in your abilities which makes it permanently effective, or you're not going to find a state where there's never going to be fluctuation based on anything else going on. We make sure our training isn't too much. We're not building a brick wall. We're developing ourselves. In our life, we make sure that our exercises are to apply to our life. If we're developing intuition or some form of spiritual senses, let's use them in our life. If we're learning to contact subtle forces and use those in a way that can allow us to bring blessings into the world for ourselves and others, let's do that. every day. Let's make it part of how we function every day. So we are practicing as much during the day as we are in our exercises. The exercises are to test the edge of our abilities. The everyday life is to use that which is well within our abilities that we've already established. When we have reached a certain point of competence in our exercises, so let's imagine we are developing a certain ability, we're learning to clear our mind of all thoughts, or we're learning to be very aware. We don't just let go of those. That isn't the criteria met. We have now applied the stimulus. So we view this as the potion that brings around the change in ourself. So we keep applying that until it's become a permanent way of being. So just like no one would work up to a yoga posture and then the first time they did it stop, we carry on applying this again and again and again until we see that this is the way that we function. To use another analogy, there's no use going to learn a foreign language and learning all the phrases and getting to the point where you can talk in class and then letting go of that. You need to keep going to the class until you can talk outside the class to people and they can understand you. Then you know you've really got it. It's not in that safe, protected environment where there's no disturbances and no pressure. You need to be able to apply whatever you're learning in your real life. If we apply all these principles, these understandings, then we can truly say that we are walking the way of Hermes, or fully dedicated to the path of immortality.